Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Hi. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. After so long, I'm here live. I hope everyone is good. You had amazing holidays, and now we're back. I'm live from cold Toronto today, and we're going to talk today with Ashley Koff, dietitian and functional practitioner, about all those juicy stuff about metabolic dysfunction, obesity, especially in women, perimenopause women, more at risk of insulin resistance and all those hormone imbalances. So I'm going to invite her. If you have any questions, do not hesitate, drop it in the comment or in the question box, and we're going to answer as many as possible today. Very good. Okie doke. Let me just...
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Hi. It's so great to see you.
And you. Good to see you. Great. Okay. Ashley, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I think we both just want to acknowledge the fires in Southern California were one of the reasons I look the way I do. Is we're trying to deal with a lot of helping clients and people right now that are needing to relocate, et cetera. So our heart goes out to everybody. It is just, it's so hard on that part. So if that's you, save this and watch this later. But just know that we're thinking about you and definitely this is, it is just, world changing for sure. Yeah.
Yes, it is it's devastating. It's so hard on
Yeah.
everyone.
It definitely is. It definitely is on that part. But thank you. I loved that we were connected, and I'm so excited
Yes.
to have this conversation. I just was finished teaching about 30 coaches who are training in our GLP-1 optimization certification. So this is the hot topic
It
for sure on that part.
is.
Yes, yes.
It is. We, especially in this era, we live in this metabolic health crisis with
Yeah.
all these hormone disruptors and everything's going on, toxins in our environment and highly processed food. Obesity is the forefront of global health concerns, of course, and especially again, we have women going through menopause or perimenopause and hormone imbalances, more at risk of insulin resistance. So, and we have GLP-1 receptor agonists, the revolutionary medications with so many benefits and again, probably side effects. Talk about what you're doing, a little bit about yourself, first of all.
Thanks. Yeah. So I've been a dietitian for about, almost 30 years at this point. So about 25. And I will say I'm so excited about agonists. My first exposure to GLP-1 hormone, which we make in our bodies, was actually working with bariatric patients in around like 2003, 2004. So I didn't hear this in my training. I think most practitioners didn't learn about. We might have learned about the incretin effect, but we didn't learn about this. And I'm so excited about the agonists because they're allowing us to have a really important conversation. So we have these hormones in our body made in the lining of our digestive tract, although what we're finding is some of them are also made, in different parts of the brain and in other places, and they're secreted locally. So these are really important peptide hormones, but they're mainly designed like a motion detector. So they're designed to turn on and off and just and signal something. Like they're the start of the of a domino series, and that, as you were talking about in metabolic health.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, with all the different things that we're encountering from a life standpoint today, the access to food, the amount of messaging, just general stress in our life, exposure to toxins, hormonal changes, all the things we're doing for good reasons, our exercise, maybe traveling, staying awake, like all these different things, we probably need more of a force field than a motion detector. So something staying on for like 2 to 5 minutes that's supposed to do as important work that it's currently doing. And so the agonists are this like supra physiological. They're so I describe them like an artificial sweetener. So they're thousands and thousands of times sweeter than sugar regularly is. And so that's great. The people that they're helping are basically saying, okay, I have my own hormones are dysfunctional. They're not doing enough of the job and I need so much more. So the question mark is, do I need that as a tool for a time period? Do I need that ongoing? And when I'm doing that, I'm taking them, the ones that we know today as like Ozempic or Wegovy, Mounjaro, those stay on 24/7. So for a week, like maybe not the full time, depending on your dosage, but they also keep us more metabolically active, like getting these hormonal signals. So I'm also seeing that people's heart rate variability, the difference between their body being in rest and digest and fight or flight, that's actually going down. Well, that's not a win. Like we want us to be more, so basically we just need better plans, whether we are on a medication like that, or what I think applies to everyone is to thrive in modern day, optimal health span, et cetera. We need to optimize our own production of these hormones. And then if we're on the medication, recognize the medication is suppressing our own, production. And then also be able to say, hey, if I don't need that tool, what can I do to optimize my own? So that's the work I'm doing. I've got a book. It's not coming out until January of next year. But there are plenty of resources and we're doing teachings on this, and we're sharing materials, and we're working with patients to help you navigate like supplements that are calling themselves nature's Ozempic. What about them? What about berberine? What about bitter foods? What about probiotics? All of that stuff. And how can we use the information that's coming at us based on this like test population of people who are using these agonists to really help us all be healthier? One final comment, and then I'll stop going at you, and we can have a chat. Is also, I love that you brought up women and hormones because I think the most appropriate way to talk about these medications is as a hormone replacement. So they are hormone replacement therapy, just like if you don't make insulin and you need insulin or thyroid hormone or estrogen or testosterone. And that does really help us know that, when you give the body what it's supposed to be producing, it is going to turn off the body's going to be satisfied. So it's not going to need to produce it. So I think the more we can think about them as hormone replacement therapy and have those conversations as patients and practitioners, and basically say, do I need hormone replacement therapy for, right now? I think that'll help us better than kind of having people be super scared about a medication. Or somebody asked me the other day if they were a vaccine, and I was like, they're not a vaccine. Like, we got to stop like making people feel badly about their choices and really help people actually find their better choices. So that's my whole rant. Thank you for having me on that part. And I'd love to hear what's coming up for you on that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's a huge change, I think, especially as I said, in this day and age with all this going on, obesity and metabolic dysfunction, and then serious conditions related by all these risk factors, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. So I think it's very important to tackle
Yeah.
obesity or blood sugar dysregulation, insulin resistance, and so far what we see, these medications have been helping everyone. So again, I think still we have a long way and plenty study to get more and more familiar to the new
Yeah.
medication And I mean, I see every day patients seeing me, different side effects, some of them, some very happy, some resistance, not losing weight. So there's
Mhm.
so many different stories we hear, and different pictures, very interesting. So I don't know what do you see patients day to day?
Yeah, yeah. We do, and we at the Better Nutrition Program, which is my company, and that link is in our profile here. We have set up a program. It's our Weight Health Optimizer program, or you can come in, and we've set it up in monthly increments, so you can sign up for a month and cancel, or you can sign up. We have some people who are staying on month to month. We have some people who go quarterly, and it's really designed to help you avoid the pitfalls at every step and also optimize. And a couple of the key things that you've brought up, I think, are really, really important. For example, people are coming in and they're saying, I'm not losing weight. Okay, well, why are you on the scale in the first place? I don't want to measure your weight. I want to know your body composition, so your weight composition. I want to know your muscle. I want to know your fat. I want to make sure that I'm able to track that, because you may be losing fat and retaining muscle, or you may have just stopped and you aren't losing fat or muscle, and maybe that's because your body is actually trying to reset itself and stay comfortable at this pace. Or maybe it's under resourced and it's actually is in a stressed out state because we're not getting in enough of what it needs. Or I've seen plenty of people who are losing muscle. I totally disagree with the statement that these medications cause muscle loss. That is a false statement. That means that you're not managing the use of this hormone therapy appropriately. And pretty much anytime we lose any overall mass, we're going to lose a little bit of muscle. But I'm working with plenty of patients who are gaining muscle and losing fat. So
Interesting.
it really depends, within that. The second thing is these medications come in and they alter your digestive function. So remember, I said I learned about them through bariatric surgery, which is a surgical changing of your digestive system. And so this is, and yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to you where you're talking about having lost weight, where we look at the fact that you are now changing, you're delaying gastric emptying. Well, if you're somebody who comes into this and by the way, this is like 80% of the population. You're either on a proton pump inhibitor, you're suppressing stomach acid, you are stressed out, you take ibuprofen, you have been on antibiotics, you're using topical medications. We are all insulting and injuring our digestive system. So if you then go on a medication that further alters how your digestive system functions, you're setting yourself up for problematic dysfunction. And many people have said, oh, like somebody just said here, I'm on Nexium. Yeah, it means that protein, you can't just eat protein and expect the body to use it. The body has to, protein doesn't even start to be digested first, maybe with your teeth, depending on, you might chew it a little, but the digestion is going to start with stomach acid working on it in your stomach, and then more acids and digestive juices as it moves into the small intestine. So if we've suppressed that, if we're on Nexium, if we're taking these medications, then very likely your body is actually not getting in a usable form the nutrients that you're taking in. Then you're getting this other message, eat more protein on top of it. And when the body can't use what it's getting in, it actually turns it to fat. So I've had people who are on the GLP-1 agonist, semaglutide, tirzepatide, gaining fat, losing muscle, and also turning around and saying, like, I've got horrible constipation, I've got horrible bloating, I smell so bad, I have skin issues, breakouts. And these are, by the way, being deemed the side effects of the medication. No. So proper assessment before going on a medication and while you're on it is so important. I don't ever want somebody to just stop their Nexium or their medication right now. What I'm saying here is the personalization of how to do this is going to be absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday whose gastroenterologist just flat out disagrees with me. And the gastroenterologist just said, I just want you on, you had some irritation in your esophagus. I want you on a proton pump inhibitor forever. And I said, okay, well, we are going to now have to use digestive enzymes, and we're going to have you have more liquid protein. There are ways we can do this, but we have, like, if that's going to be the case. And then I also pushed back and said to the gastroenterologist, can we do a test where you don't maybe go off of it, but if you're on 20, why can't we get you down to 5? You know, why can't we make an adjustment? Because this person had taken off 40 pounds of belly fat on their semaglutide. I think that their whatever reflux was actually diagnosed initially, whether it was actually low stomach acid or whether it was high acid, is probably better. And no, Pepcid is not better than Nexium. The answer is to get or it could be better for you. The answer is that we actually have to have you figure out what is better for you, and that may be that being on that medication is needed, and we have to make some alterations in your diet as a result, or it may be that we need to get you off of that. And again, that's something we have to do in practice. You cannot do that based on a recommendation. Like, I'm not making a recommendation here. I do want to be very clear, because you can feel really badly if you stop a Nexium or a Pepcid, you know, that you were taking on that.
Yes.
Yeah, such good questions. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate what why you're asking, because you know, I think that a lot of times people just assume that a side effect. So first of all, anytime we're using anything, what we call exogenous, external to the body, like a tool, you know, whether it's supplements, whether it's medications, on that part, we're going to have their changes. So we're totally overriding,
Round
you know, on that part.
effect.
Right, right. Yeah, so we have to be careful in that way. But at the same time, we also don't want to turn around and just say, oh, that's a side effect of the medication. Like, I have a lot of people who are just saying that they're just comfortable living with hemorrhoids now, what really bad hemorrhoids, now that they're on semaglutide. And I was like, that's not the answer, because hemorrhoids are a symptom and are something we should be addressing. And we definitely should be addressing your constipation, you know, why it became so difficult to poop in the first place. Yeah.
For those who just coming and joining us, we're talking about metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, obesity, and management with GLP-1 receptor agonists here today with Ashley, dear Ashley
Yeah.
Goff. So yeah, so it's important to first of all, it's very important being personalized. So everyone is different. So not the dose work for your sister work for you.
Right.
It's very important, or medication even. Some people find it easier, side effects
Right.
less, more. So it all depends on you and your body and the environment you're living, even the stress levels you have. So it's very important, all of those factors.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know too, like, there's a whole vanity side to it, you know, as well. Like, I mean, look, you know, I think as women, I'll say personally for me, when I turned 50 a couple of years ago, just 1 year ago, but when I turned 50, you know, it was, and the year probably leading up to that, it was just, I was like, wait, everything that I've done in my life to learn how to address belly fat and skin and, you know, all this other stuff, it was like, all of a sudden it was not playing out the way that it had been. And I was like, I need a new game plan. And one of the reasons that I think many people are attracted to semaglutide and tirzepatide is they're seeing friends who literally just look younger. Like, they're like, we look younger, we look better. Now, there are also people who lost weight too quickly, or lost fat and lost muscle, and their skin is maybe sunken in. We heard Ozempic face, or, you know, or maybe the skin is more irritated, or a lot of people are talking about hair falling out. So one of the other things to really understand, whether you're on the medication or whether we're following an approach to optimize our own endogenous, because we've identified that either we're not a candidate for the medication, or the medication, we don't, that it isn't accessible, you know, or something there. We want at how the body gives us signals. And so when the body gives us signals in our skin, in our hair, in our nails, you know, in all of these places, those are going to be really important ones for us to pay attention to, because that's going to tell us how it's optimally resourced. You know, am I giving my body not just enough protein, but is the variety of amino acids actually going in to support my body? And a lot of people right now are avoiding seed oils, and they're saying, like, I want, you know, and then that's played out where people are even not eating seeds because they're like, oh, I just don't want anything like that. And hemp seeds, for example, are one of the best sources of gamma-linolenic fatty acid, GLA, I call it the glamour fatty acid, that is actually going to help women and men with better hair, skin, and nails, you know, et cetera. So as somebody also who works in, when you're seeing patients, or if people are coming in and saying like, hey, what can I do for this on my face? What can I do for this? We have to turn around and say, hey, what's going on with your nutrition? Because that is going to, yes, there are many things that we can do, and also there are things that nutrition won't do. Like, as I've learned, like about the bags under the eyes, like sometimes we just need aesthetic intervention, or
Yeah.
some of these other things. But it is so important for us to pay attention to that, in terms of making it not just something that we address aesthetically, on that part. Yeah.
Someone is asking about protein
I'm so
intake.
glad.
So that again, it's now we see everyone is talking about increase your protein intake, take at least 30 gram with each meal,
Yeah,
go up to 100, 150 grams. So what are your thoughts on
sure.
that?
Thanks so much for asking. We're in a place too where there isn't consensus and a good place to say, well, the World Health Organization or this organization recommends this. So there isn't one set recommendation, but I will give you what I use in clinical practice and what I use and how I evaluate it. So first of all, if your digestion is not better, that's the first place to look at, because protein utilization is the most important thing. It's just like you don't get credit for drinking water if you're peeing all the time. So if you're a hose and you're not a sponge, that water isn't staying in you. We've got to absorb the water. So when we eat the protein has to go to all the places it needs to go, which means it needs to get broken down and it needs to get absorbed. So that means your digestion has to be really good. It also means that when we give the body too much protein, just like with too much carbs or too much fat at one time, it is only going to be able to use a certain amount, and what it can't use, it stores as fat. Now, it may store some of those amino acids for a little bit of later time use, but it will also, so eating too much protein can contribute to body fat. So we test that. That's why I use the InBody H30, and I just have people get it on Amazon, or we have a discount code. And I have you do once a week. We just look at your, on waking, we look at your body
Mhm.
fat as it compares to your muscle, and we look at that. So the other best way to get in protein is to split it up. So your body is designed like a race car, not a passenger car. So you want to pit stop regularly throughout the day, maybe 3, 4, maybe for some people 5 times. And so you want to split up your total amount. Now, there's a movement that says 1 gram per pound of body weight. I think that is really problematic because most of us weigh over 100, 120, even 150 pounds on that part, depending on, where our current weight is.
Mhm.
After about 150 grams of protein, which would be 5 pit stops of 30 grams, it gets really hard to get that protein in. So what I would say is sometimes we can use the amount of protein. A good recommendation could be 1 gram per pound of desirable body weight. So if you weigh 150 right now, but a desirable body weight is 120, that might give us a better range. You still have to split it up throughout the day. And then if your desirable body weight is above 150 pounds, so if your desirable body weight is 200 pounds or 220 pounds, I'm probably still going to have you closer to 150 grams, but I'm going to pay a lot of attention to your digestion and also the amino acids to make sure that we're getting in what your body needs. And I may find like once or twice in the day, we can go as high as 40 grams of protein at a time. What I would think for most of us, a good range is 15 to 30 grams at an eating occasion. I call them pit stops because I'm telling you, your body's a race car. So at lunch, at dinner, at snacks, having a minimum of 15 grams and kind of having your maximum be anywhere between 30 and 40 grams, depending on your digestive function, is going to be very helpful for you. So that would mean for the person who's trying to get in 100 grams, if you have 5 pit stops in the day, maybe it's 5 20-gram pit stops, or maybe it's one that's 15 and another that's 30 grams, et cetera. Maybe you're eating 4 times in the day. So then we would divide 4 into there and be like 25 grams. And again, we can do different math games, to make it work. But when we think about the better, and I always say better, not perfect, or better, not best on that part, the better ways to get it in are, number one, I want it to be delicious to you. I like that it's deliciously doable, because when we enjoy the taste of something, it helps us to be satisfied so we don't go looking for something else. The other thing about protein is we do want to get it in from a diverse sources so that we get in different amino acids. So I get different amino acids in chicken and eggs than I would get in cheese, than I would get in salmon, and then I would get in beans, or then I would get in
Mm-hmm.
seeds. So I like to have a diversity of your different sources of protein in the day. And then the other part is sometimes, especially as we go later in the day, or maybe if there's a particular time in the day where we're stressed. So some of us wake up and our digestion isn't so great, or maybe we wake up a little stressed, or sometimes we intentionally stress ourselves out by doing a HIIT workout, which is awesome, or lifting heavy weights, etc. You may want to look more at the form there of liquid. So maybe making a smoothie, or maybe having something that's more easy to digest, like say cottage cheese, than having a piece of steak that you have to chew through and that the body has to do a lot of digestive work on. And that's a place where I see real improvement, especially as we get into later in the day, where, maybe at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, a lot of times people tend to have like maybe more digestively challenging, more digestion required of their protein sources. And it ends up where it leads into the time where the body's trying to digest, but it's also trying to go to sleep. And that ends up not being better. So it's a lot to take in. It's why I definitely recommend working with a coach or a dietitian, like on our team, or turning around and saying like, hey, how can I figure this out? But make sure that you're using data. You can wear a continuous glucose monitor, and you can see that if the way that you're eating is helping you. I don't want to avoid all spikes, but I want to make sure that we're not spiking too high, or that our blood sugar is coming back down and staying, that we're spending more time in a better range. We can look at things like heart rate variability and aura rings. We can look at blood work. So if our inflammatory markers are elevated, I use, and I'm curious about you, I use AST and ALT. So I look at liver enzymes because I want to see, that we're not seeing fatty liver, or that, there's more struggle there. So let's use data to see if our protein intake is actually, better on that part. And of course we can test test amino acids, as well on that part. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm all agreeable with these trackers are great, especially for educating yourself. So at least for a period of time to wear them, and it's very helpful, insightful to know how your body react to any food you put in your mouth.
Yeah.
Again, this time comes with the personalized medicine.
Yeah.
Knowing your patient, because some people get so hooked on these monitors, and that cause so much
So much.
stress. They forget about eating, they forget about everything, and that stress itself is the killer with that
Yes.
high cortisol. So again, it's keeping that balance. It's very important for me, and knowing my patients, some of them very sensitive, so
Yeah.
it's again balancing,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
having that.
I love that. And I think it's also recognizing that we experiment. So, whenever you or I come up with recommendations for patients, that's a starting point. So I think it's a mistake when somebody thinks like, I'm going to go see the doctor, they're going to tell me what to do, I'm going to go do it, and boom, it's going to work. Many of us have experienced that isn't the case, that it doesn't work. And then we feel either like we're a failure, or we think the doctor was a failure. And it's like, no, that was just a try, So I love that this person said they were having 50 grams of protein in a smoothie. You're the person who had also mentioned, Nexium. It's like, okay, that was too much for your system. So I like the 30 grams of protein, and maybe that would keep you from being constipated. And then what Zia is saying, by adding the digestive enzymes, maybe that would also be helpful, or for the person, in that capacity. And I also think that tag teaming, one of the reasons we wanted to get on here is that a doctor and a dietitian are such a great duo, because when doctors help to diagnose and to say to you, hey, this is what's going on, and here's what I think the recommendations are, now you can work with Ashley and her team, and this is why I use coaches too, for us to figure out what's going to be doable for you, and for us to come back to the doctor and say, hey, here's what's going on with the patient, here's what we figured out, here's what might be better on that part. So I love, being able to to collaborate. Okay, in terms of a good protein shake, well, good is challenging in terms of what I find tasty, what might be the right nutrients. I'm going to tell you what I don't like. I don't like when protein powders have a bunch of vitamins and minerals and other herbs and supplements in there, because we don't know if those are going to be in the right form or the right quantities. I'd rather that you got just a protein powder and then you worked with your naturopath, because you mentioned you're working with a naturopath here, to get those other nutrients in. So I would say that's key. The other thing is I like blends so that I'm not overdoing it on one. So I might do, I frequently do this. I do a scoop of whey protein. I do a scoop of chickpea or some sort of a plant blend, like maybe it's got like a little bit of like amaranth or like some other options in there. I mean, there are all sorts of different plant-based options, hemp, et cetera, on that piece. And then I will add a little collagen. I might throw a little glutamine in, so we can play with those. There are some companies that are doing ready-made drinks on the plant that are doing 30 grams. Some of the ones that are doing a nice job with some lower sugar options are OWYN, OWYN, also Koya, Koia. I like Orgain, although some of the Orgains have all these other, vitamins and minerals in there. So I think you can look at those. But one of the other things that I think is a negative in a lot of protein powders is they use a fair amount of stevia and monk fruit, and that can really, those mess with your gut. Like, they don't mess with your gut as much as the artificial sweeteners, but they can certainly do that. And they can also mess with your taste buds on that part, where you're getting in too much sweetness at a time, and that can be a real issue for you. So, I'm happy to walk through more of that. We've got more recommendations, but what I would say on that part is, it can be a tool, but a lot of these tools that are really marketed, and they're not necessarily, better options. I think that's why you're asking, because you probably, you know that. So I think that's key. But what I would also look at on that part is do variety. And then I highly recommend, especially if you're working with a naturopath, curious what your thoughts are too, I would probably do at least once a year. Look, if you have the resources, to do a test that looks at your heavy metals and different toxins, because a lot of these things, when we eat them in nature, may have a little bit of those in them, but when they're created into a concentrated amount in a powder, they may have higher amounts, and you may unknowingly be getting that, getting higher levels than we want to see of things. I'm seeing a lot of what was I seeing the other day? It was, of course, everyone thinks of mercury in fish, and we're looking at lead, but there's a lot of cadmium that we're seeing, and just a fair amount of different ones. And so, we then that need to unpack your supplements and your food and everything else, that, and sort of look at what could be a factor there, as well on that part. Yeah.
Again, about whey protein, which type of protein? Always, that's one of the main questions. Should I get a plant-based or whey protein,
Right. Yes.
powder or protein bars? So that
Yes. Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great question. So the ones that I mentioned, and I don't have any affiliation with them other than like I use them with my patients and et cetera. But some of the ones that I think would tend to pass a better quality standard. There's one called Koia, Koia, I think. Another one called OWYN, OWYN. I feel like most of these are US and Canada. If you're outside of those areas, I'm not quite sure. Orgain, and then also all the time I have people tell me, oh my gosh, Ashley, those are disgusting tasting. Like, I find some of them not so palatable, so I personally love to look at places for protein powder. Like, I like ProMix, ProMix Nutrition. I like their whey protein. I like their plant protein. On that part, my friend created a company called Simply Fuel, and she has chickpea protein, so I like that. And so there are varieties. When you look at bars, you have to and when you look at ready-made shakes or anything like that, you have to go the next level up and really look at them in totality, to see about all the nutrients that are in there. So you want to look at the carbs, you want to look at the fats, and kind of see how it's working for you on that part. And by the way, baked mackerel with lemon, I've never tried it. It sounds so good. Thank you so much for bringing us back
Thank
to a
you. Yes.
conversation, because I love that arena. So very much appreciate that. That it seems like a great suggestion on that part. And I also saw somebody ask about, Raynaud's. Could it be aggravated due to gluten and too many carbohydrates? So when the digestive system is irritated, that can trigger, that does result in, and that tells us that there is inflammation and irritation. So anything, and including Raynaud's, is going to be exacerbated by that. The question of whether it's the gluten for you, it definitely could be. Gluten often can be irritating. Depends on how much and what kind, and it depends on your digestive system. It can equally be stress. It can also be things that I was talking about before, like ibuprofen or Advil, or it could be medications for your skin. It could be other things that are irritating. And so what I would look at is, if you're trying to figure out why you're having a flare of Raynaud's, then I would look at, number one, is there inappropriate inflammation that I can reduce, that I can on that part? And then there's another part of inflammation, which is resolving inflammation. And we really look at that with, is our body able to take the omega-3s and omega-6s and turn them into resolvins? Those are so important to turn off inflammation. And so that might also be an important place to look. Irina, I think there's a variety, but I love that you're having the mackerel, because mackerel actually will get you, will get you some of those resolvins also in your fish on that piece. So I do like that part. Zia, the protein bar world is so, oh my gosh, there's so much on the protein bar side, with that. It's going to depend on taste. So some people, I like the Perfect Bar, which is in the refrigerated section. Full disclosure there, they don't pay me the money, but I have my Ashley Cough Approved logo on there. Some people don't like that because they feel like there's too much sugar. I'm fine with it because the sugar is honey. And I use that, but it may have the milk there is a milk protein that might be an issue for you. I mentioned Simply Fuel. She has the Simply Fuel balls. There are so few protein bars that I think actually taste good that I usually recommend that people make their own, just because I find that the quality of them, or maybe even do something like a jerky, or like that kind, and look at that side rather than looking at the bar side. I'm just even trying to think off the top of my head. Sometimes some of my patients like the I can see the package, 88 acres. It's fine. I personally don't love it. I don't find it delicious. So I think there's just a variety there. Zia, we might need to talk offline and see if we can help you more with personalizing it. But great point. Dates, peanut butter, and chocolate is not a protein bar. It is a delicious dessert where the dates are being used for the sugar, but they're not, and probably some sugar in the chocolate. But with the peanut butter, depending on the ratio there, probably the most you'll get is like maybe 6 or 7 grams, and you'll probably be closer to like 30 grams of carbs. I want you at least 15 grams of protein, and I don't want you to have to exceed 30 grams of carbohydrate for that. So we may need to play around a little bit more with what is added into your protein bar there.
Ask about dairy. What are your thoughts again, dairy products?
Yeah, so dairy, gosh, there's such diversity in how dairy is produced. So I think that like goat and sheep milk and things like that, for example, tend to do it tends to fall into like less of like the big industrialization, that's occurring. So we can sometimes do better with that in terms of the quality. But overall, what I would say is, I think when you keep the dairy, so a healthy animal, just like us humans, when we produce milk, or our flesh, if we're eating our flesh, but in the case of dairy, if we're looking at the milk, then it is going to have the degree of inflammatory compounds based on how inflamed we are. So the more stressed out an animal is, the more like if its digestion is really bad, it's being fed stuff that like all of this stuff, then suddenly the dairy stops being as healthy for you. And you can't just look at the presence of nutrients, like is there calcium or is there protein. Poor quality protein is going to be as bad for us as less protein, and not getting it in. Dairy also for many people will be more mucus forming, not for everyone. So I
Yeah.
think that that's an important piece. And raw dairy, if you know your source, like, and you really know your source, not just like, oh, a friend told me this is good one. And you know that from the moment you know how the raw milk has gone from the animal into your refrigerator, and you know when it's going to stop being good. I think there could be a lot of advantages to that. I think that there's, I think the biggest problem with dairy, so it's probably on a spectrum, is it was made into a food group. It is not a food group. The nutrients that are in dairy, we can get absolutely anywhere. So it's a choice. And so when I look at a choice, I would think of like meat as a choice, or I would think of, bacon as a choice, or I would, other things. And we turn around and we say, so is this the way that I want to actually get in my nutrients, and how does it do for my particular body? And I think that's going to be really important. Most of us as we age become more lactose intolerant. And so when that happens, that can be creating more irritation and inflammation. Yeah. So some people, like when I'm dealing with somebody with autoimmune, we might out the door just trial an elimination, trial reducing dairy, trial reducing gluten, and just tell me how you feel. Now, if you're going to do an actual elimination, it has to be absolutely no exposure whatsoever to that ingredient for 28 days. So that's different than where I'm talking about here of like eliminating or reducing, maybe just reducing or
Less
removing
exposure.
something and seeing how you feel. Yeah, reduced exposure. Thank you. That's a great way to say it.
Exactly.
Yeah, on that part. Yeah, yeah. Does that align with kind of how you think about it too?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, as you mentioned in the beginning, to work on your digestive
Yes.
system and gut health. That's very important. Before talking about nutrition, we
Yeah.
want to make sure we put nutrition in a healthy body, healthy digestive
Yeah.
system. So that's very important too.
Yeah. And then I think the other part is it could be seasonal, or like, for example, this morning here before like all of this crazy fire stuff, I was out the door at 4:30 and I was getting my workout in, and I did a really hard workout. And after that workout, I need something that's really easy on my system. So if you're somebody that has that post workout and you're now deciding to have like maybe like milk in your, or large latte, or something else like that, I think that you need to make sure that your digestive system at that time of the day is also going to be able to, the liquid form of dairy may be really good. Maybe eating cheese at that point doesn't work as well for you. And then we also have to myth bust. Dairy is it's not just about the protein. Dairy has carbohydrate. So if you're having a large latte, which tends to be like 16, 18 ounces, you may that much milk, you're eating like 3 slices of bread. So that we also really have to be careful about, in terms of making sure that we're looking at, a lot of my clients have milk in their, like a latte in the morning, and then also are having like overnight oats, or also having fruit or something else. And so they're in their brain, they thought that dairy was a way to get in either fat or protein, but they weren't thinking about it as the carbohydrate side on that part. Yeah.
Yeah, very true. You mentioned about your workout.
Yeah.
Any recommendations? So that's again a very uh, popular question.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
asks about what type of to build up muscles. What should I do, especially for perimenopause women or
Yeah.
menopause women? We are bones and muscles.
Yes. Well, here I stand when it comes to the actual workout recommendations. I stand on the shoulders of giants who are much more skilled at explaining that. I have a colleague, Elisa Klein. She's just amazing. My colleague, JJ Virgin, another
Mm,
colleague, Brendan, and I share their stuff all the time.
yeah.
They're the ones who they're going to be able to come in and do that personalized assessment and help you. But some of the guidance is, first of all, you can't build muscle if your digestion isn't working well, because your body is not absorbing
Okay.
the proteins, et cetera. So, this
Mhm.
whole conversation is really important. And then how we recover is going to be so important. So I work with a lot of pro athletes. I also work with a lot of performers. So as soon as our whole game is about recovery, like as soon as you're finishing, how are we Is it, cold? Is it hot? Is it massage? Is it liquid nutrition? Is it, all these different things that, vagus nerve, like, using one of the gadgets. How are we turning things off so that we can then turn it back on? So very often I see that people who are not making muscle are and don't like see the results that they're looking for, are not looking at their recovery. They also may not be actually measuring their muscle, they're measuring their weight, and that's a negative on that part. But the other one, so your recovery, your sleep, I think it, is really important on that piece. The other one I think that is also very valuable is you can use a continuous glucose monitor to also see your workouts should spike your blood sugar. So not all of them. Some of them are recovery, like where, if you take a nice walk after eating, it's going to help your blood sugar to come down, right? And that's great. And that's a great way to be able to like eat your carbs, enjoy them, and also not have high blood sugar. So we love certain things like that. But if I'm doing like the kind of workout that I did this morning, or the one I did yesterday, those were so like very intense. Yesterday I was doing a game on a ski ERG, where you're like whoosh, whoosh, and you're doing 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 15 times. Oh, I still hurt thinking about it. So when I was doing that, I have to make sure that afterwards I am like, when I look at my blood sugar, I need to know my blood sugar is actually going to be high from that. So that means that I now need magnesium, which is great because I get it from chocolate. So I put cacao in my smoothie. I'm doing liquid nutrition. It's easy on my digestion, and I'm adding. I'm also, the magnesium is helpful for electrolytes. I'm adding in some foods that are sources of potassium. So I'll put some cauliflower, frozen cauliflower in my smoothie, et cetera. And I'm doing that, and it's like, okay, now my body's getting what it needs from a recovery standpoint. And I think that training we need to factor in from a training standpoint that the body, what we do to stress our body out when we're not training is also interfering with the recovery for our training. So if you had a really stressful day, or if you had a very bad night's sleep, and the stressful day, by the way, could be awesome. It could be like, oh my gosh, I found out I'm getting a promotion, and then I found out this, and then I went and told it, like, and it's excitement, or you were giving a really big talk at work and then it went really good. Okay, so my body didn't recover well today. So we can see some of that from data and like the Aura Ring, or the CGM. And by the way, I don't always use those too, because I have plenty of people that don't use or don't have access to those. We can ask questions and track things throughout the day, and that's going to give us good guidance on how to move our how to make adjustments to move the impact of our training forward, for sure.
So recovery is very important.
So key on that part. I would say your recovery this is the non-fitness professional saying this, but I'm willing to say that your recovery is more important than what you're actually doing in your training session. Now, I know what you're doing in your training session is very important, so I'm not saying it
Or
all.
as important as, yeah.
Yeah, it's at least as important. Yeah, absolutely.
I totally agree. What about you? What are your thoughts on creatine?
Yeah,
That is again a hype nowadays, with
yeah,
especially recovery,
yeah.
muscle recovery.
We have this funny thing. I definitely think it's a US thing, but I think we export it globally. But, we fall in and out of love with nutrients or foods like every like 3 to 6 months, or at least every year. And so like the new things, the new fads, number one, that happens very often driven from a marketing standpoint. And I say this with full knowledge. Before I became a nutritionist, I sold sugared cereals. This was in the 1990s. But I worked in advertising, and that was my job. And I've never forgotten that experience. Like, there are people whose like they're out there to sell you new things. So they're going to come, and look at that. So, if we were having this conversation 3 years ago, it would have been all about collagen, right? It was collagen, 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 on that part. So collagen has some amino acids. It also has some, other nutrients, and creatine is 3 different amino acids. And the reason that it's so important is that, number one, we may not be getting enough of those amino acids from an intake standpoint, but we also may not be bringing them together and actually creating the creatine, right? Like the amino acids may be being used for other things and not being in that way. And so getting in the formed creatine, where we have those 3 already coming together, may feel like an easier way for our body to get that and have access on that part. And what I would say is, yes, like I love it. Like I've added it. I mentioned like I'm an endurance athlete in the making. I'm training for another, Everest climb, and like
Wow.
this is intense. Like I'm 51. Like I gotta like, I'm like I don't want saggy eyes or any of these other things. And so okay, but do I need it? Do I need to take creatine as a supplement? Could I get in amino acids? Could I dial up my food intake? Yes. I, the dietitian, am telling you that I am too lazy or that's not where I'm going to put, maybe it's not lazy, but I'm not going to put all my efforts there. And my life never happens according to plan every single day. So I use my supplements as a foundation to get me in creatine, taurine, some leucine at a low enough level. I optimize my digestion, and then I make intentional food choices. And sometimes I just want to eat something because it's yummy, not because I know that it's going
Yeah.
to give me the 3 amino acids that are going to meet my creatine needs. So I just want to be like, hey, this is the system I put together and it works. So what I would say is, if you are not exercising or if you're not lifting heavy weights and you just decide to add creatine and you're like, why am I not making muscle? That's a problem. But creatine is also really important for brain health. Just like we're learning, we know how important estrogen is for brain health, and we're looking at hormone replacement therapy there. And, like it's really important that we get these things in. And so I think there's value, but I also really want to alert you all to there's a lot of marketing that's going on that
That's
part.
true. I
And
agree.
so I think that's, we do have to pay attention. And thank you guys. I so appreciate the support. I trained for my first Everesting last summer in Sun Valley. So you have 36 hours to climb 29,000 feet. I started out, I trained for 6 months. I was with my teammates, got up the first two, and as a perimenopausal woman, I hadn't had my period in 3 weeks, or it was 3 weeks late. I got to the mountain. I did 2 climbs up, 2 of 15, and I got my period at the top of the mountain, and everything fell apart from there. So my win was that I did 9 of 15 there. This year I'm doing it in Whistler in August. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get back up there. And I now know what to do if my period happens. And here's how you do it. But it's so cool to train and do certain things like this because you start to really see how your body uses nutrients. But you also recognize that at a certain point in time, like there was nothing I could do. Like that amount of blood loss, and we all know what happens when we get our period, everything else lost. You just like, at the end of the day that, we're humans, and then that's what's going to happen. So it's exciting to do. I highly recommend training for something as a way to dial in your
And
nutrition. I think it's a great, great.
what do you say to those who keep complaining, I don't gain muscle, I don't build muscle? They do everything, they eat lots of protein, they do exercise, but they can't get rid of that glass of wine at night, late night. They're tired, they're exhausted, and they like to have 1 or 2 glasses of wine.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, I never want somebody to be like, I do everything right, because like on that part, like, first of all, we never do. Like there's no perfect. My company's the Better Nutrition Program, and we're BNP, better, not perfect. So so alcohol, funny thing has happened with alcohol. We've looked for, like, we as a society really love to tell ourselves like all the things that could be good about something. And marketing definitely loves to tell us. So, the fact that there's resveratrol which is a really important antioxidant in wine, everybody is like, well, but wine has resveratrol. It's got to be good for me. Yeah. Washing your floor with dirty shoes. You can't get like clean if you have something dirty coming in on that part. And alcohol is a toxin to the body. There's just zero way around that. I don't care if you're French. I don't care, like, wherever in the world, if you're Russian and you're drinking vodka or whatever, it is a toxin. Now, our bodies are built with detoxification systems. And if we want to minimize all our other sources of toxins, and we are healthy, and we want to, and we're able to get a cleaner quality of wine or whatever, and we want to take that in, perhaps we can take that in. The information is not great on alcohol and our being able to do what we want to do from a health standpoint. And one of the places I think it's more often overlooked, a lot of times people say, "Ooh, you should probably have less alcohol as you age just because of from cognitive function and because the body's making less of the enzyme to break down alcohol and all these things." But for those of us, this includes me, who are drinking in our teenage years, and maybe drinking a lot in our teenage years, a lot for our body size, your body is in a formation time period. We're forming bone, we're forming hormones, we're forming, I mean, so much on that part, you know, boys and men and brain health and things like that. Some of this isn't even fully formed into our 20s. So it is really important. Abuse of alcohol and consumption of alcohol in those years needs attention. If someone is willing to listen, or said differently, it shouldn't be overlooked. And then I think the other part is the recommendations for men or for women, where it's like a woman can have 1 glass and a man can have 2 glasses. And okay, by the way, women and men, like, that's just the dumbest. Like, they're like, the difference, like, I know a guy who is 100 or 150 pounds, and I know a woman who's 300 pounds. Like, let's just not look at male, you know, or hormones or any of that stuff.
No.
The male versus female piece is not helpful on that part. You shouldn't be drinking alcohol every day. Like, there's just no way of getting around how it impacts the body. So what I would look at is, it's probably kind of more like ice cream. Maybe you have ice cream once a week, you know, or maybe you go through a period where you have ice cream. I remember Gunnar Peterson, a friend who's like this incredible fitness expert. I should have mentioned him on fitness. He's like, I grew up as an obese child. Ice cream was a comfort food for me for some of his traumas. And he's like, you know, every once in a while, I know what's happening, and I know I go in, and he's like, and I go in, and for like a week, I just have ice cream, and I have so much ice cream, and I overdo it on ice cream, and then I'm done, and it's like out of my system. So there might be a time period. I hope you don't like overdo it on alcohol, but there might be a time period, maybe it's an occasion or something like that, where, you know, maybe for a week you have alcohol a little bit more often, and you work on your sleep, and you try not to do the other things that can be worse. But I would definitely look at limiting it. And if you're not where you want to be health-wise, I would absolutely look at alcohol as one of the best initial things to put aside, so that you can work on your health on that part. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
One last
Okay.
question
Yeah.
about, so we keep hearing about, and I saw one of your videos on microdosing
Yeah.
on semaglutide or GLP-1 agonist. So what is that
Yeah.
exactly? What does that mean? We hear
Yeah.
that all the time. So what is microdosing on these new
Yes.
medications?
Okay, so first of all, these are peptide hormones, and I have to give, and I want to say that for clarity, because there's a lot of peptide conversation, and peptide microdosing is a conversation that's out there.
Yes.
I have to give so much credit to my colleague, Dr. Tina Moore, and she is the one who really looked at, in the early days of microdosing, not for anything related to do with weight loss, microdosing of semaglutide. So that is it is a microscopic amount, so much lower than the first dose. So if a first dose is, say, like 10 mLs or 5 mLs of some, however much somebody is taking of a medication, when they're starting to use the compound, what I'm talking about here are like 0.1, like microscopic. So when we think about, we have grams of protein, we have milligrams, and then we have micrograms. So we need to understand that those are hundreds, if not thousands of times smaller than that larger amount. So microdosing is unlikely to have any impact on the weight side of things, on the body composition, on the food noise, etc. Where it may be very effective is on inflammation, which, by the way, of course, is a factor ultimately in health and in weight health, but it is not going to it's not being used in that space. So then what happened is, it looks like 2 different communities grabbed onto this. One community that grabbed onto it is the biohacking community, who said, oh yeah, we microdose. But when you actually look at the dosing they're talking about, those are not micro doses. So that's also something to look at. And the other community that got into it is when the compounding versions of semaglutide and tirzepatide were available, people started to say, or even on their own. I had a client that she and her husband broke up open their shot because they wanted to share it. So they had split it up. And so they were like, oh, well, we're microdosing. And I was like, no, you're using a smaller dose there. So smaller doses or low doses are super, super effective. Like, I love that. Start at a small dose, see what change, how your body can respond to it. Evaluate any side effects, start, like, do all the work of the things that we're talking about on that part. That's great. Just don't call it a microdose, call that a small dose or a low dose. So that is a
Just to
really
clarify,
yeah.
microdose is on compounding
I mean, I
medication,
suppose you
compounded.
if you cracked open an Ozempic needle and you took out a microscopic amount, like say you had a dropper and you just took out like the tiniest amount, you could probably create a microdose from that. But microdosing is most typically done when you're using a compounded version, because what you want is you're using a needle that you're injecting into a vial, and you're saying, oh, I'm able to take out just the tiniest drop on that part.
And that
Yeah.
is not for weight loss management.
Not,
It is for other purposes. As
correct.
you
And
mentioned, lots of biohackers.
that's exactly, I think that's probably the best way to say it, noting that, of course, if somebody starts to see, like, results that are improving the lining of their intestines, they're actually going to produce more of their endogenous GLP-1, so it's going to be favorable, but it's not directly what we would be using. So anyone that's interested in or is saying they're microdosing for fat loss, or for the better body composition on that part, that's I will follow her lead on that, but and I don't want to speak for her, but I would say I have not seen that, and I don't understand how that could happen. Yeah. On that part. Yes. Oh, this was so fun.
It
Thank you.
was great. Lovely. We
Yes,
should do this again.
I'd love to.
So much information. Lovely.
Good. Yeah. And
Useful.
if anyone's feeling overwhelmed, do you save this? Will they have access to
Yes,
it? Okay,
yes.
great.
I did see so many questions.
Perfect.
I save it and I
Good.
share it with you. So definitely.
Perfect. Okay, great. So anybody then, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining. And
Thanks,
Zia
everyone.
said she saved it so that way you can re-listen to it. So you'll be able to
Sure.
do that. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Get you. Take care.
Bye-bye.